Hello and welcome back to my channel. These are my 2023 Xfinity Series predictions. I recently did this video for my Cup Series predictions, and I plan on doing them for the Truck Series probably within the next week before their season gets started. So these are going to be my race winning predictions for each race in the Xfinity Series season. You will notice I do not have any Cup guys winning races because we don't always know who's going to race what race. So I'm just doing Xfinity, so maybe like Kyle Busch may come back and win a race, or Chase Elliott, someone like that. But if that happens, I'm not accounting for that. Or Tyler Reddick, I know he's racing at Auto Club with Sam Hunt Racing. If that happens, I'm not accounting for it. So these are just Xfinity guys only. So without any further ado, let's get going straight up with Daytona. I have Brandon Jones in his first start with Junior Motorsports winning at Daytona. The 9 car has been very good at Daytona as of late, especially with the drivers making their first start in it or getting their first win in it. Tyler Reddick won in the 9 back in 2018 in his first start with Junior Motorsports, and Noah Gragson got his first win in the 9 at Daytona with in 2020 in his second season, but his first start in his second season with Junior Motorsports. Junior Motorsports has always been pretty good at Daytona. They've won a handful of season opening races, including both those races and in 2016 when they won with Chase Elliott. I think that Brandon will get his Xfinity Series tenure with JRM started off on the right note with a win at Daytona. Next up, I have Auto Club, where I do believe Cole Custer, making his return to full-time racing in the Xfinity Series, will win. Cole, of course, won this race last year with SS Greenlight Racing in the 07. And he also won back his last full Xfinity Series season back in 2019. He won the Auto Club race as well as his first win of the season that year, when he went on to win, I believe, 7 races that season. So yeah, I do believe Custer will continue his dominance at Auto Club and get his 3rd win at the track. Next up, we go to Vegas, where I have Daniel Hemric finally getting his 2nd career win and his 1st win with Colleague. Hemric's always done really well at Vegas. I believe he finished top 5 there last season with Colleague, and he finished runner-up there to AJ Allmendinger back in 2021 when he drove for Junior Motorsports. When he drove for JRM. When he drove for JGR, not JRM. Of course, that was Hemric's championship season. Colleague is also, of course, won at Vegas, as I mentioned. Allmendinger won there back in 2021. I expect Hemric to kind of take that Allmendinger role this upcoming season. With Allmendinger moving up, I think he'll be the true leader and the best driver at Colleague Racing pretty consistently, especially with them only fielding two cars that will have full-time guys in it, with the 11 and, of course, the 16 with rookie Chandler Smith. Next up, we got Phoenix, where I have Jonathan Nemechek, who will actually be driving the 20, but there's no pictures of the 20, especially from last year. The 20 did not run. So all of Nemechek's wins will have a picture of him in the 18, but I do have Nemechek winning at Phoenix. Nemechek has always run well at the shorter tracks. He actually brought a Sam Hunt car up to the top 5 at Phoenix last season. Phoenix is also normally a really good track for Joe Gibbs Racing. They won there, of course, the last start at Phoenix. They won with Ty Gibbs. They also won back in 2020 with Brandon Jones. So they're pretty good at Phoenix. Nemechek's also made starts with them at Phoenix back in 2021 in the 2nd race, a race that was actually won by Daniel Hemric in the 18. He made a start in the 54 and did finish in the top 5. So I do expect Jonathan Nemechek to have a good race and be able to finish with the win, get his 1st win of the season, and lock himself into the playoffs. Next up, we got Atlanta, where I have Austin Hill winning. Hill, of course, won the 2nd Atlanta race last season. He's kind of been able to make himself known as a very good super speedway racer. He, of course, won Daytona to start off last season and won again in Atlanta. I think he'll get his 3rd super speedway type racing win at Atlanta. He should have won Daytona back in August. I felt like he led forever during the last portion of that race when everyone wrecked over and over again. But I do believe he'll continue his success on these more plate race type tracks and get his 1st win of the season at Atlanta. Next up, they go to COTA, where I have Kaz Grala winning in an upset for Sam Hunt Racing. Grala had possibly one of the best races of his career back in the 2021 race in the Truck Series at COTA, where he drove for Young's Motorsport in the 02, and he almost won. He competed inside the top 5 the whole day, but ended up being bested by Todd Gilliland, who ended up winning that day. Gralla has proven to be a pretty good road course racer. He, of course, finished in the top 10 in his first Cup start with RCR back in 2020 when Austin Dillon got COVID. And he's had some experience at COTA. I do believe that that he'll be able to get this win, though, and lock himself into the playoffs. Probably being the biggest upset, especially early into the season. Next up, we go to Richmond, where I have Nemechek getting his second win of the season. Nemechek probably should have won Richmond last year if it wasn't for Ty Gibbs moving him in the final corner. So I think that he'll be able to, since Gibbs isn't down there, I think Nemechek will be able to win this race. He's also won a few truck races at Richmond, including beating his boss, Kyle Busch, back there in 2021. Next up, we got Martinsville, where I had Brandon Jones winning. Brandon probably should have won both Martinsville races last season. He, of course, won the first one, and then he was leading going to the last lap, and the second one, where then he got dumped by Ty Gibbs, which was a big talking point, especially late in the season. But I think that Brandon will be able to continue his success at Martinsville and get his second win of the season. Next up, we go to Talladega, where I have Daniel Hemrick winning. Hemrick's always been pretty good at the super speedway racing. He's scored a few top 5s, a few top 10s there in the past. Ran well in basically every super speedway race last season except the first Daytona race, where he did win both stages but then got wrecked. He looked like he may have been able to win the second Daytona race, but then also had an issue. Finished top 10, I believe, in the 2 Talladega races last season. He's been pretty consistently good at these super speedway races. And of course, Colleague Racing has been one of the teams to beat at the super speedway racing ever since 2019 when they got their first win. So I do believe Hemrick will get his second win of the season, getting his first multi-win season of his career, and also getting his third career win. Next up, we got Dover, where I have Justin Allgaier winning. Allgaier always likes to win at the same 3 or 4 tracks, and Dover is one of them. He, of course, won, I believe he won both Dover races. He won one of the Dover races back in 2020, when they did the doubleheader at Dover and the doubleheader at Richmond back-to-back. He won both Richmond races, but only one of the Dover races. Chase Briscoe won the other. He also won the race back in 2018, but that win was encumbered after he failed post-race tech. But he's always been pretty good at Dover. He ran well there last season. He always seems to run well, and I think he will get that win at Dover. Going to Darlington, I do have Allgaier winning his second race of the season here. As I said, Allgaier likes to win at the same tracks a lot, and he's actually won the spring Darlington race the last 2 seasons in 2021 and 2022. I think he'll make it 3 in a row with his 2023 win. Next up, they go to Charlotte, where I have Josh Berry getting his first win of the season. He, of course, won Charlotte last season on the oval in pretty dominating fashion. Him and Justin Allgaier kind of battled out for it, but then after Allgaier made contact, he, I think, won by half a lap. So yeah, the Junior Motorsports cars looked unbeatable at Charlotte last season. I think that'll continue this season, and Josh Berry will prove that he can get another win. Next up, they go to Portland, where I have Sheldon Creed finally getting his first Xfinity win. Creed struggled a lot last season, but then towards the end of the season, he started to improve and get better, which should have been more expected because that's the same type of thing that happened back in 2019 in the Truck Series. He struggled greatly his first season, but then in his second season, he won the championship. Now, I may not be predicting him to win the championship. I do predict him to win a race and make the playoffs here at Portland, as he always runs well at the road course races. He, of course, won the Daytona Road Course back in 2020 in the Truck Series. And if I'm not mistaken, he ran in the top 5 basically all of Portland last season. So I do have Creed winning his first career race at Portland. Next up, the Xfinity Series go to Sonoma for the first time in a very long time, if not ever, especially the first time in my lifetime. And I have Cole Custer winning. Cole's going to be one of a few guys in the field that actually has experience at Sonoma. Of course, he raced there in 2021 and 2022 in the Cup Series. So I believe that he'll just kind of be able to take off and win. He's a pretty good road course racer. I don't think he's ever won one in the Xfinity Series. I can't think of one off the top of my head. But he did almost win at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park back in 2016, when then him and Jonathan Nemechek wrecked, and there was the fight, and Nemechek ended up winning. But I think Custer's a good enough road course racer that he can get the win at a track where a lot of guys have a ton of experience. At Nashville, I do have Custer going back-to-back. Nashville's probably been one of Custer's best Cup Series tracks. He had a great qualifying there in 2021, and he's always been around the mid-teens, which tells you how bad the Custer's Cup Series career was up to this so far. Maybe he'll be able to improve if he goes back up there. But it was a big struggle for the 3 seasons he was there. But Nashville, in the 2 seasons, in 2 races he was there, they were good bright spots for him where he did run well. He had good qualifying performances and was in at least the top 20, which wasn't a guarantee for most of his Cup Series career. So I do have Custer winning at Nashville, getting another win, just continuing to pile up wins, especially as we get towards the summer and almost into the playoffs. Next up, we get Chicago, which is another unpredictable race, as I said in my Cup Series predictions. You can really flip a coin, say that anyone's going to win this race, and I'll believe you. I'm going to have Sheldon Creed win it. As I said, Creed's a good road course racer. I think he'll improve greatly this season. And I feel like this race may just be one that a lot of guys reckon, and that he just may be able to stay clean. He's always been a pretty clean driver. He normally can stay out of crashes. He sometimes does have a tendency to wreck his stuff up. But it seems to be better. He didn't wreck a ton last season. At least what I can remember. At least what I can remember, especially late in the season. And I think that he'll be able to get that win. Then they go to Atlanta again. I have Sam Mayer finally getting his first win. Sam is in a very pivotal season because he did struggle a lot last season. He had a consistent year. I think he had about 20 top 10s, but he didn't win. And especially for a guy who a few seasons ago we looked at is basically on the same level as Ty Gibbs, not winning while Ty Gibbs won 5 or 6 races in the championship isn't a good look. I think this is going to be a very pivotal season on the future of Sam Mayer because there's not a lot of Cup opportunities for him, at least in the next few years, assuming that like Alex Bowman resigns and no teams really want to expand too much. Sam's going to need to start proving like now that he is worthy of a Cup ride, and I think that an Atlanta win will help him start to look better and better. Next up, we go to New Hampshire. I have Justin Allgaier winning. Allgaier has been very impressive at New Hampshire. He, of course, won at New Hampshire last season. He also, since joining Junior Motorsports back in 2016, he has one finish worse than 7th at New Hampshire, and that was in a 2017 race where he had an issue and finished a few laps down. Other than that, all top 7s, mostly in top 5. This is the track that really suits Allgaier. It suits the veteran. Like, even Landon Castle ran really well there last year when Castle did not have a great season. The veteran drivers just shine through it in New Hampshire. It's a very difficult track, and I think that Allgaier will be able to kind of pick off a win here while a few of the other younger guys may struggle. Next up, they go to Pocono, where I have Josh Berry winning. Not much behind it. I think Josh ran well last season at Pocono, but Junior Motorsports only runs decent at the track, and it seems like a track that Josh would pick up pretty well. Based on where he wins and stuff. I think he will get another win before the playoffs, and I have him get a win here. Next up at Road America, I have Austin Hill winning. Hill is a pretty good road course racer. He, I think, finished 2nd at COTA. I think it was this past year in 2022. He finished 2nd at COTA. And it just seems like a track that he would win at. He's always been pretty good at the road course racing, especially since moving up to Xfinity. And especially with AJ Allmendinger moving up, who of course won a ton of the more recent Xfinity races on the road courses, and Ty Gibbs, who won another handful, including Road America last year. The road course racing in Xfinity is really wide open, with not a lot of guys who are really good at it, so I do believe that he'll be able to shine through and get a win on the road course. Next up, we go to Michigan, where I have Sammy Smith finally getting his first win of the season. Sammy ran really well at Michigan in what was only his 2nd start, I believe. Back in last August, but then had a pit road penalty late, I believe, and finished right around 10th. I think Sammy has a lot of potential, but I think it's going to be a little rough around the edges this year, kind of like a Sheldon Creed, but I think he will run better, just because I think Joe Gibbs Racing is better than RCR. And I think that Sammy will get his first win at Michigan. And the Gibbs cars always run pretty well there, of course. Ty Gibbs won this race last season, and as I said, he ran well there, so I think he will be able to get a win and lock himself into the playoffs. Next up, we go to the Indianapolis Road Course, a race that I really have no clue on who would win. Of course, the guys who have won it on it so far are AJ Allmendinger and Austin Cindric, who were both up in Cup. Also, a lot of Cup guys only run this race and run well in this race, like Alex Bowman did last year. So there's not a lot to go off of, in my opinion. On who is going to win. Actually, they raced here 2022. Chase Briscoe won. Gragson's up front. All these guys are up in the Cup Series now. I'm just going to go with Allgaier. He's experienced. something that I'm going to say a lot about Allgaier. He's way more experienced than basically everyone else in the in the Xfinity Series this season. So I think on a lot of these tracks that the younger guys may struggle on, Allgaier is going to be kind of the guy that shines through and wins. And that's what I have happening at Indianapolis. Allgaier is going to be the cool head, shine through. He's going to avoid crashes. He isn't going to make dumb or erratic moves to try to win. He's a smart guy, and I think he'll be able to get that win. Next up, we go to Watkins, Glen, where I do have Kaz Grala winning his second race of the season, as I had Kaz winning way back at COTA. Kaz is a good road course racer, as I said earlier, and he actually did finish, I believe, third with Big Machine Racing at Watkins Glen last season. He's always run well at the road courses, and the Toyotas have ran really well at the road courses as well. Of course, Ty Gibbs won there his first season in the Xfinity Series back in 2021, and Ty was running in the top 5 last season when he wrecked with William Byron, taking him out, and Kyle Larson won. But I do believe that Kaz will be able to stay out of trouble, lead a lot. I think, as I said earlier, there isn't a lot of road course talent in the Xfinity Series right now, and I think a guy like Kaz Grala, who may not be in the best position or best equipment, but does have a lot of road course racing experience and success, will be able to get that win. Now at Daytona, I have Sammy Smith winning. Sammy was, I believe, actually wrecked at Daytona last season, but Sammy just seems like well, the Gibbs cars normally run decent at the super speedway races, and I think a lot of guys always wreck at this race, especially the second Daytona race. That race is always carnage, especially like last season where Jeremy Clements won after a ton of guys took themselves out. Sammy wrecked really early in that race, if I'm not mistaken, and really didn't have a good shot to avenge that. But I think after like almost a full Xfinity season at this point, combined with his starts from last season, and of course up to this point, which I believe would be around race 23, 24, I think that Sammy will be able to kind of stay out of trouble and get the win. Next up, I got Darlington. I have Austin Hill winning. Austin Hill has run well at Darlington the past few seasons, especially up in the Xfinity Series when he has run, especially last season. He ran really well there. He also is just a good driver. He's a very smooth driver, which I think is needed for Darlington. He doesn't make stupid decisions. He doesn't wreck himself. He doesn't sacrifice his car really early to make a big move. He knows how to take care of his car. That's the thing that I think a lot of guys are going to like when he eventually does move up to the Cup Series. I think he is definitely a Cup talented driver just because of his calm-headedness, just being able to understand the situation he's in and not wreck, which is very important at Darlington, to understand where you are in the race and maybe not make a move because it's too early, and to stay out of trouble, keep your car clean. And at Darlington, especially in the Xfinity Series where they wreck a lot of cars, and some of the teams that have won at Darlington the last few years have very wrecked race cars, such as Noah Gragson last season, where Gragson and Sheldon Creed and Kyle Larson had that amazing battle. And even it almost came down to Ross Chastain winning a few seasons ago when Ross ran through the back of Denny Hamlin. It's always chaos at Darlington in the Xfinity Series, especially the second one. And I think that Austin Hill will be able to kind of stay out of that chaos and win. And for what I believe is the last race of the regular season, I have Cole Custer winning at Kansas. I think Cole will honestly be able to win basically at will for most of the season. I think he could win easily like 10 or 11 races. I think he's probably the best driver in Xfinity by a decent margin, at least for points of the season at certain tracks. I think him, Nemechek, and Allgaier are probably the best 3. And I think that a lot of the times he won't win is because they're just trying something, because they got that win race 2 back at Auto Club. But I think going to the playoffs, they're going to be like, we want to get a little more playoff points, and they're going to win Kansas just to stack up 5 more playoff points going into the playoffs. So from a regular season champion, I do have Daniel Hemrick winning it. I think Hemrick's going to be super consistent. Colleague has won the last 2 seasons, both with Allmendinger. I think Hemrick, as I said earlier, will kind of take over that Allmendinger role, just be super consistent, just bang out good results, and will win the regular season championship. Probably by a decent amount, just because I think a lot of guys will have issues, and it always happens, especially the younger guys. Despite winning 10, 11 races sometimes, they wreck so much that it doesn't even matter how many points they get there. They can't win the regular season championship. Like last year, Ty Gibbs and Noah Gragson won a ton of races, and while Allmendinger did win a handful, Allmendinger was way more consistent than them and won it. And I think that's going to happen again with Hemrick. I think some guys are going to win way more than him, but I think he'll be more consistent, and he'll be able to get the regular season title. So let's introduce the playoff grid. I have Cole Custer being the 1 seed essentially with 4 wins, with then both Justin Allgaier and Austin Hill having 3. Daniel Hemrick, Jonathan Nemechek, Brandon Jones, Josh Berry, Sheldon Creed, Sammy Smith, and Kaz Grala all have 2. Sam Mayer will have 1, and rookie Chandler Smith will point his way in with no wins. I think Chandler, there's a lot of good guys in Xfinity this season. It's going to be a good tight battle for the final playoff spot, as I have guys like Riley Herbst and Ryan Sieg, who both made it last year. Just barely missing it. I think Chandler will just be more consistent. I think Colleague is just a better organization than definitely Ryan Sieg Racing. No offense to Ryan, but I think Colleague is just a better team as of right now. And I think it's close with between Colleague and Stuart Haas, especially in Xfinity. But I do believe that Chandler Smith is just better than Riley Herbst, and that will get him into the playoffs over Herbst. To start off the playoffs, I have Chandler Smith winning at Bristol. Chandler won the Bristol truck race back in 2021. It was his first truck win, and I think it will be his first Xfinity win as well. Colleague Racing has always run pretty well at the Bristol races. They, of course, won it with Allmendinger back in 2021 when him and Austin Cindric wrecked coming across the start-finish line. I think that Smith will just kind of be able to stay out of trouble, be up front, and I think it'll be a good race as it always is at Bristol. And he'll be able to kind of shine through and get his first win, locking himself into the round of 8. At Texas, I have Jonathan Nemechek winning. Nemechek won at Texas back in 2021 when he made a start with Joe Gibbs Racing in the 54. It is one of 2 tracks he's won at in Xfinity. He won it here at Texas in 2021 with Gibbs, and he won at Kansas way back in 2018 with Chip Ganassi. He also won a few truck races here, including 2021 as well, in the Romco truck with Kyle Busch Motorsports. Texas seems to be a track that Jonathan Nemechek always runs pretty well at, and I think he'll be able to get the win here. It's also a track that Gibbs only runs well at, as they've won this race a handful of times, especially with Kyle Busch. He's been competitive there. Daniel Hemrick, when he ran the season with them, he was competitive there. It's just a good track for Gibbs and Jonathan Nemechek. Next up, we got the Charlotte Roval, where I have Parker Kligerman winning. I think Kligerman will be good this season. I just don't think the equipment will be able to keep up with him. Honestly, I think he's a very good driver, probably better than a lot of guys who made the playoffs there. But I just think the equipment just won't be there quite yet. But I do believe that he'll win on the Roval. He has won a road course race before in the Truck Series at Mid-Ohio last season. And the 48 always runs really well at the road courses, mainly because of the drivers that are in it, like Kaz Grala and Jade Buford. But I think part of it is just the equipment is better on road courses, and the RCR Chevy seem to run pretty decent at those types of tracks. And I think the Roval can get kind of crazy sometimes, and Parker's a good driver that will stay out of trouble, as I can't recall an instance where he really wrecks, especially down in the Truck Series with Henderson Motorsports. I can't remember a single wreck that he's been in. Maybe at Talladega in like 2018. That'd be like the only time I really can even think of him possibly wrecking. But for a guy who keeps it clean, a guy who's a decent road course racer, I think Kligerman is that, and will be able to get his first Xfinity win. So that will wrap up the round of 12, and I actually have Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, Sammy Smith, and Kaz Grala being eliminated. I'm going to start with Kaz Grala. Big fan of Kaz Grala, from Boston just like I am, or from the Boston area. And I think he'll have a good season, but I just don't think the Sam Hunt Racing cars are there quite yet. I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be better than they have been in years past with Kaz full time. But I just don't think the performance on the ovals will be quite there quite yet. And I think he will sadly be eliminated very early. As for the other 3, I just think, especially for Sammy Smith, I think inexperience will get in his way. Same thing with Sam Mayer and Sheldon Creed. I just think there are better guys moving on and ahead of him. Creed was probably the toughest one to eliminate. I think Creed will have a very good season. I think that Creed would actually point his way in if it wasn't for the Chandler Smith win at Bristol. I think Chandler will score less points in the round. But the win at Bristol will, of course, lock Chandler Smith in, so it won't even matter. But I just think inexperience will kind of bite them in the butts, and just better guys being in better equipment will also hurt them as well. Start off the round of 8, I have Cole Custer immediately locking himself into Phoenix with a win at Las Vegas. Las Vegas is another track that Cole's run pretty decent at up in Cup. I think his first Cup start was pretty good. And he's also a track that he's always runs pretty well in Xfinity. He's normally up in top 5, especially that last 2019 season. And I just think that he'll be able to kind of win that race. He'll want to win early in the round. I think they will basically have the opportunity to win whatever race they want in this round. But I think he'll win early just to lock himself in and win. Next up, we got Homestead. I have Nemechek winning. Nemechek's very good at Homestead. He always likes to run that outside lane. He probably could have won the Cup race there last season if it wasn't for himself wrecking himself very early. He qualified in top 5, was running up front, running good laps, and then wrecked himself, and he was basically out of contention the rest of the race. I think that as long as he stays out of trouble, Nemechek will be able to be up front, and I think he'll be able to get that win at Homestead and lock himself into the Final 4, becoming the second guy to lock himself in. I have Brandon Jones winning at Martinsville in the last race of the round of 8. As I said earlier, Brandon Jones should have won both races last year. I have him winning the early Martinsville race again this season, for the 2023 season, and I think he'll go 2 in a row, 3 out of 4, and lock himself into the Final 4 in his first season with Junior Motorsports. He should have probably made the Final 4 last season if it wasn't for Ty Gibbs, but I think he will finally get over that hump in the 2023 season, make it to the Final 4 for the first time in his career, and be able to fight for a championship again for the first time in his career. So that will end up eliminating Justin Allgaier, Josh Berry, Chandler Smith, and Austin Hill. I'm going to start with Chandler Smith. Chandler is going to be a rookie. I think he's going to be inexperienced. I don't think he'll be able to get the win when it needs the most. As I said earlier, if he didn't win Bristol, I wouldn't have even had him in the round of 8. And I just don't think it's his time yet. I think Chandler will be a great driver in the next 3 or 4 seasons. I just think it's a little early. He struggled a decent amount his rookie truck season, and I think it will kind of be the same this season. I think he'll struggle, and then in 2024, I can see him winning 3 or 4 races and possibly being one of the favorites for the title. As for the JRM duo, Allgaier and Berry, I just don't think they'll be consistent enough. I think that, of course, if you're looking at who I have eliminated and who I have winning, Hemrick will make it in. I think Hemrick is going to be super consistent, just like he was during the regular season. I think the regular season championship points will also get him, help him get through. And I just don't think the top 2 will be able to, I think they'll be close. I think they'll probably be the 2 closest. Probably Berry in 5th, Allgaier in 6th, if that was my predictions. But I think they'll just come up a little short this season. They both, of course, made it last season. I think they're very capable of making it again. But I just think they'll be a little short with the log jam there will be. As for Austin Hill, I think Austin Hill's a really good driver. As I said earlier, I think he deserves to be in the Cup Series probably by next season. But I also don't think he is fully developed on the non-super speedway tracks yet. I would like to see him win at like Kansas or a Homestead or Las Vegas or even a Martinsville. As back in his truck days, Martinsville was the biggest Achilles heel for him, especially when he was racing for Tory, trying to make the Final 4 in his years with them. Something would always go wrong at Martinsville in the short tracks, and he would miss it. And I think that will happen again. I don't think he'll make the Final 4 for the first time in his career, not just in the Xfinity Series, but also in just all of the series, as he never made it in the Truck Series in the 16. So that means my Final 4 is Cole Custer, Brandon Jones, Daniel Hemrick, and Jonathan Nemechek. Of course, I have both Custer and Nemechek winning like 5 races up to this point in the season. I'm not sure exactly what the number would be, but I have Nemechek winning like half the playoff races going into this race. I had him winning Texas and Homestead, so a third of the playoff races. I had Custer winning, I believe, 1 playoff race. Brandon Jones, I have just being super consistent. I think he'll have a breakout season and make the Final 4, and I think Hemrick will just be super consistent, allowing him to make the Final 4 as well. So my championship pick, or my winner at Homestead, is Jonathan Nemechek. So he won at Phoenix, not Homestead, as I just said. But I do have Nemechek winning at Phoenix for the second time this season. He won there earlier in the year. He was good there with Sam Hunt Racing. Last season, he's run there in the Xfinity Series with Joe Gibbs Racing. Joe Gibbs Racing has also won the last 2 Xfinity championships with Daniel Hemrick and Ty Gibbs. They're always really good when it comes down to it, and I think he will be able to extend the streak to 3 straight Joe Gibbs Racing Xfinity Series champions, and with 3 different numbers, of course, he'll be in the 20, not the 18. But I do believe Jonathan Nemechek will be the 2023 NASCAR Xfinity Series champion, winning at Phoenix, Richmond, Texas, Homestead, Miami, and Phoenix again. This will, of course, be Nemechek's first championship in any of the NASCAR series. He's come close down in the Truck Series a few times. He hasn't come close in the Cup Series in his one Cup Series season. But I think this will be a big season for him. Prove that he is about top of some of the greatest lower series drivers. Probably going to be in contention for a Cup ride in 2024. I think he'll get that. I think he will move up the Cup right after this. I think this will be his only Xfinity season with them. So yeah, I think that Nemechek will win the championship in pretty convincing fashion, winning 5 races and move up to the Cup Series. So now for my top 10 points, I do have Nemechek in the 20 winning the championship. I think Custer will probably finish second, just be right behind him. I just don't think I think that, especially if Phoenix, Nemechek's a better driver than Custer. If this was Homestead, I'd probably go the opposite. I'd probably go Custer, but sadly it's not anymore. But yeah, I think that Nemechek will just barely beat Custer. I think Hemrick will probably finish around 5th to 6th. I think he'll be in contention, but I just don't think he'll be quite there quite yet. Yeah, same thing with Colleague. I think they're almost ready for their first title, but I just don't think they're quite there just yet. I think they'll be there in the next 2 to 3 seasons though. And then for Brandon Jones, I think he'll be pretty competitive. I see something going wrong late in the race. Maybe he falls off the jack. Maybe he has a slow pit stop and is kind of falling back. Maybe finishing around lower top 10, probably around where Christopher Bell finished up in the Cup race this past season. 9th, 10th, 11th, and just sadly finishing 4th and out of the final 4 contenders. Then I have Allgaier having a great race at Phoenix, passing Berry in points. That would put the 2 JRM guys 5th and 6th. The 2 RCR guys are 7th and 8th. I believe that, as I said earlier, that Sheldon Creed gets eliminated a little earlier than he probably should be. I think he'll be very consistent and will move up. Same thing with Sam Mayer. I think he is right behind Sheldon Creed, and I think he would be ahead of Chandler Smith. But I do have Chandler holding on to that final playoff spot, or final top 10 spot. As for the 2 other guys in the playoffs, I have Kaz Grala finishing in 12th. I just think he's in the worst car of the 12 guys. I think he's a great driver. I think if you put him in the 00 or the 11 or the 9, one of those cars, I think he would be possibly your champion, definitely Final 4. But I think that 12th is a realistic expectation for a team that is almost there but not there just yet. And then in 11th place, I would have Sammy Smith. I just think he'll be a little less consistent than Chandler Smith will be. Chandler's had, in at least both their Xfinity Series starts so far, I don't believe Chandler's wrecked in any. Sammy's wrecked in a handful and had a lot of issues. I think that will persist into this season. I think that Chandler will be a little cleaner, a little more consistent. Sammy may get a few more wins, which I have him winning one more race. But I do believe Chandler will finish higher in points. So that will leave with Chandler Smith winning the Rookie of the Year and Justin Allgaier winning the Most Popular Driver. Of course, there isn't a lot of competition for Rookie of the Year this season, especially in Xfinity. Chandler Smith's in it. I know that Sammy Smith is in it. I would assume Parker Retzlaff is as well, racing for Jordan Anderson. Other than that, I do not know who is even in contention for it, but I think that Chandler, finishing top 10 points, will easily rotate that. And then, driving for Junior Motorsports, I think Allgaier will get it done. I think it will be another Junior Motorsports driver. I just think Allgaier is the most likable of the 4. I think him and Barry are very close. I think it will be probably a shootout between the 7, 8, and 9. I just think Sam Mayer is not as likable as the other 3. But Allgaier has a pretty good fan base already. I think Brandon Jones is going to kind of become one of the fan favorites this season, but just doesn't have that fan base behind him quite yet. And then I think Barry will be close, but I think that Allgaier just get him out, just more name recognition. Everyone seems to know Allgaier. Not everyone seems to know Barry. And I think that will kind of help Allgaier win the Most Popular Driver. So I want to thank you for watching my 2023 Xfinity Series predictions. I hope to see you tune in a few weeks to find out my Truck Series predictions. And I hope that you would also take a look back at my Cup Series predictions to go see how I believe that season will turn out, including who I think will win Daytona, the other 3 Crown Jewel races, and the championship. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.